in an attack in Beijing. So there are reasons for people to be working with us.
There isn't much time left, about 7 minutes, but your questions, please. Ellie?
In October, I believe it was, that Russia's indicated that they're not going to renew the Lugar agreement.
Right.
Is that any indication that they are that they want to work with us and an ally when it comes to Iran, or is that not?
Tony, John?
I think John's probably best on that.
My interpretation is this, because that is something that is actually in their interest to do with us, because they don't want loose nukes floating around either. I think they're setting up to negotiate with the administration over missile defense, where it is in their interest to limit or make our missile defense virtually useless. And they'll bluff the administration here, because after all, the Russians know perfectly well that the missiles we're currently deploying cannot intercept most of Russia's arsenal. They have missiles that travel faster or fly at lower trajectories and all sorts of things, which the Russians are counting on that the general public doesn't know and that our leadership doesn't know. But they're trying to limit missile defense. They want to veto over what we deploy with our allies in Europe, Eastern and Western Europe. And that will reduce our influence, and their lever to do so is they know how badly we wish to extend non-Lugar. That's what I believe they're trying to do.
If I could add a little bit.
Please.
Yeah, there's a completely separate issue regarding the Russians and strategic threat. We've not dealt with that either. I don't want to get into it today, but suffice to say that the Russians have never stopped as part of SALT II doing the basically experimentation that we don't do. I have friends, I've been at this nuclear strategy forum where we talk about the fact that they have developed, without having to do anything that we would consider too badly violating the treaty, a fifth generation of nuclear weapons, which makes their use more likely by the fact there's very little after radiation effect. Very little, a lot of blast, less radiation, which means you could probably come in very quickly and cohabitate. And then, of course, the EMP weapons. These are things which makes the potential use of a nuclear weapon more likely by the fact that your adversary thinks he could probably use it, get away with it, and devastate you without certain aftermath effects. I think it destabilizes rather than makes more certain peace. So we've not paid attention to that. The last two administrations, the Bush White House was equally deficit on this. Steve Cambone, Secretary Rumsfeld did not pay attention to this at our own peril. So this is something I think we should pick up. And again, this is not about reducing or making the world more safe. This is about the fact we've neglected our responsibilities as a nuclear power in maintaining our own arsenal to a level that is sustainable, that is a credible deterrent. And at the same time, we have adversaries who continue to experiment to improve theirs, and we pretend otherwise.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. London, for a wonderful conference. My name is Peter Giese, and my question is for the Congressman. The administration uses the phrase Al-Qaeda and its affiliates when describing terrorism. They almost never connected to states. I want to know kind of your perspective, because you mentioned, as well as the Congresswoman, about state-sponsored terrorism and also Iran and others giving a nuclear device to a terror group that they create with the purpose of attacking us surreptitiously, so their fingerprints aren't on it. That's number one. The second thing is, Congressman Turner and your committee have been particularly adamant about sustaining our nuclear deterrent. And yet this administration reneged on the New START funding promises, as you know, for our deterrent, as well as the missile defense money. They said, what's your sense of where this next year, particularly if sequestration occurs, of where we're going to go on that, and how do you see it? How do you see Congress being able, the House particularly, being able to bring the idea of a state sponsor up into the? Because most Americans wonder, why the hell are we in Iraq? Why are we in Afghanistan if the terror groups are just individual jihadis running around, which we described as, Al-Qaeda and its affiliates?
Well, as I indicated, it's so clear to me, Iran sponsoring terrorist organizations, and it was identified, Tony and John did too, in regard to Hamas, Hezbollah. It just goes on, and then we know that the improvised explosive devices that have been used against our personnel and our NATO allies in Iraq and in Afghanistan were clearly provided by Iran as state-sponsored, not as through intermediary jihadist organizations. That should all be recognized. And then in regard to the nuclear deterrence, and I'm so happy you brought up Chairman Mike Turner. He has been a champion of how important it is. And I have another angle to this. I'm very grateful. I represent the Savannah River site in South Carolina, which is where it was the site of developing our nuclear capability that brought victory in the Cold War. By having a strong nuclear capability of deterrence, that's how you protect the American people. That's how you protect our allies around the world. And I'm very concerned that our enemies believe that the Americans and Israelis have the watch, they have the time. That is a belief they have. And so we need to be working on this, and I certainly will be approaching it in a bipartisan manner. We have, particularly on the Armed Services Committee, members of both political parties who work together closely. Also, I want to commend, and y'all really are important to have the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Ileana Ross-Slayton, in here. She too, if you were to come to a Foreign Affairs meeting, you would be, all you hear about is division here. Actually, to see the coordination and collaboration that we've had, such as the Iran Sanctions Act. And so it is possible, maybe not as much as it should be, but it is possible that we can work together on identification of terrorists and also a nuclear deterrence.
I'm afraid you have the last question, sir.
Oh, I'll try and make it a good one.
Okay.
All right, so
I'm only saying that because we're limited to 1 hour in this room. I'm terribly sorry.
what's the balance today, do you think, between human intelligence and national technical needs? I mean, as far as tracking this all down, I mean, this is for you, Tony.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like we're at a deficit in human intelligence based on the discussion that you.
We are. Let me hit that in two parts. Some of you probably saw the Washington Post article about DI doubling its size. I'm a DoD case officer, for those of you who don't know. I come out of that program. Doubling it with the current leadership is you might as well double the size of the circus. Because you don't have people effectively using the resources they have now. And I'm being blunt because that's the way it really is. We need to get back in the game on human intelligence. We have become overly reliant on drones and national collection systems because it's easy, because it's safe, because you don't put a human being in harm's way. Look, we invested in Special Operations Command, we invested people like me. To get me trained initially took over a year. And my job is to do those things which no one likes to talk about. You know, I'm not a good guy. I always talk about this in my radio and TV interviews. I'm not a good guy. I'm the guy your mother warned you about. But with that said, my job is to get the intelligence which is in the networks. And this is where we're failing. We're not getting into the networks. One of the great failures of the bin Laden raid was that we announced it right when it happened. We should not have done that. We should have waited at least a week or two and then explored the networks. Try to walk them back. And this is why we need to go back to capturing. And I know this administration doesn't want to hear this because I get hate mail from them every time I say this on the air. We've got to do the things to capture individuals. Dead individuals tell no tales. And so we have overly relied upon the drone program to eliminate enemies instead of capturing enemies. And my book, Operation Dark Heart, was actually a cross-border op into Pakistan. Do you imagine Al-Qaeda, Taliban hanging out in Pakistan? Shouldn't you probably go there to get them in 2003? Well, we didn't, and we saw the proliferation of this and still have problems there. So the balance is askew. I would say we're taking probably about 80% of our intel from national means, 10% from open sources, another 10% from clandestine. That's my swag. I'm not telling, I don't know that, I'm just saying, right? And it should be a lot more human intelligence because you need to get in those networks. Those networks require that you do hard operations to penetrate. That means undercover work, and that means you roll up people when you have the opportunity and interrogate them. I'm not going to get into the waterboarding thing, torture, not torture. I'm just saying there's ways of breaking people without torturing them. I've done it, but you've got to break them. You've got to find out what's in their head so you understand the network, because these folks have understood how to beat our national method, our means. And we got to get back to the hard work to protect the country. One quick note. I'm hearing from the inside that about we are launching strikes on these individuals with only 40% intelligence accuracy. When back in my day, we were doing 80% or better. So we've got to get back on target on that as well. But human intelligence should be the emphasis. I would fire the leadership and start over again, because we ain't cutting it right now.
On that very extraordinary note, I've got to bring this to conclusion. Let me thank the three panelists. Let me also suggest to the teacher who's present today that the book review for the students should be Sleepwalking with the Bomb by John Walston. So please buy the book and have students review it. Let me thank all of you for being here. Tony Schaefer, who's introduced the whole dimension of realism. This is not the world that we would like, it's the world that we live in. And I think we've got to be realistic about what the options are and what we as a nation have to do. And Joe Wilson, thank you very much for the service that you provide to the country.
Thank you. So you were a Mitch Rath, right? You were a Mitch Rath.
I can't answer that
I've talked about it before. How do you have David, I'll do that. You give Ellie a few copies. I think we should talk about
when you get back to your classroom, you can engage in the conversation.